Okay. Let us do Jhum cultivation. Jhum cultivation. Jhum cultivation is also called shifting. Shifting cultivation. What is shifting in this? It is also called extensive agriculture. Extensive agriculture. Extensive agriculture came before intensive agriculture. Extensive first, and then intensive next. What is meant by extensive agriculture? Agriculture is domestication of plants. Came as a result of Neolithic revolution. And in the beginning of Neolithic revolution, people would use the land for some time. Crop. And when it becomes less fertile, when it loses its nutrients, then they go to another land. Another field and crop. They shifted from one place to another place. And they would come back after some time to this place. Till that time, this land will be kept fallow. So which means cropping, keeping it land as fallow, and then cropping again. After how many years they come back, that depends upon how fast this will be useful once again. So this is called in Northeast India Jhum cycle. Jhum cycle can be for a decade or less than a decade. Usually the land they use for cropping period, the time they use for cropping period is much less, maybe 2-3 years, compared to the time for which it will be kept fallow. So use for some time till it loses its nutrients, and then keep it fallow and then come back. So this is what is called shifting cultivation. It's also called extensive agriculture. So much land is being used extensively. When people started using the same land with the application of inputs, that came to be called intensive agriculture. Intensive agriculture is much more productive. Use of fertilizers, irrigation gave rise to intensive agriculture. So the point is, extensive agriculture is part of human story. Part of human story. We were all shifting cultivators one day, at one time. So this is shifting cultivation is part of the way we evolved. But now some people continue to do shifting cultivation, whereas most people moved to intensive agriculture, or other things like industrialization. Okay. Why do some people continue to do shifting cultivation even now? Because that land is not favorable for intensive agriculture. Hilly terrain, deep slopes, okay, forested, remote, transport difficult, using animals is difficult, animals for attraction difficult, and also using shifting cultivation, they were getting enough. That is, they are able to survive. That's a subsistence economy. Okay, subsistence economy. There is no surplus and no market. No surplus and no market. That's how they were going along. And societies are usually egalitarian. And land commonly shared. So shifting cultivators usually have these things. Let us see some shifting cultivators of Northeast India. This is people of Garo Hills. Garo Hills practice shifting cultivation. They are in Meghalaya. I want you to see how the field is like. Okay. First, it is a commonly owned and land is allocated to the families. So see this.
사샤샤늘 아로니온 셸리온 나몽아 안탕탕냐 아디고 강님은 샤노 파나몽아 파나가빠데 아무카 무게냐 간침보 강가빠 랭쟁 아지다 라우닌 잠바나 야 말바니 아바콘 잠칭나 왓장 공파니 아바콘 샤나샤노 파겐비야 시릭보 녹프리랑나 잠맛나 잔쟁 루탈 제킨 샤나 특가 기자가 받에 더 나가네 또 시알을 아루는 나 만만자와 동제족마 강한테 숑발로 라마 우토겐 와차박 나숑 특가 샤뭉 구멍이 우토고 안탕탕이 라마코 이제족 공어대 아바 전만족 날디 라모전 아토방 키압 미루 침족 심상 지지앙 틈보 막할 독기멍
왜 그냥 미치바 같이 그 법을 아론 그 법을 미치바 살종바 왈라 치아 수저데 아야 숙바잖아 나바잖아 왈크고 늑저데 안 갈고 늑저데 그 바잖아 함이
See, that is how they distribute the land collectively, and then they clear like this.
Isia salzong ana iana ketok iana jang chariana uning mana agal makudis kang abasukna jo ton khana nanga uning mana kang abasuk sukka bacha misia salzong ketok iana balwar ngana amakong bajokona sekyong bajokon hayur upakna.
See, there are so many trees like this they are not removed. Okay, so they cut main ones and they burn the entire vegetation. So some trees are still there and they grow. So this is a kind of rejuvenating. So it is not like burning everything. So trees are cut, then vegetation is burned. Some trees remain. Okay. So that they come to crop. But when the land is under fallow, were they using it? They were. Fallow land does not mean it is left unused. It is not like that. So fallow land is also used for purposes like this. See, for timber, firewood, ropes, medicine. Some kind of secondary forest is created in the fallow land. So fallow land doesn't mean land being wasted. It simply means not cropped. Is kind of secondary forest is created. So it is said that the forest is viewed as a landscape of fields at various stages in the cycle. So this is how shifting cultivation takes place. So egalitarian land distribution, crop, fallow, again crop, and fallow does not mean being wasted. It is simply used in other ways. And food diversity is there, variety of crops. But on the whole, it is a subsistence economy. Okay. Next, why is this practice very controversial? Very controversial. It is controversial because many see the forest being simply burnt. It is burnt because out of that burning, ash comes, and ash containing potash is the fertilizer to the crop. But that doesn't seem to be an efficient way of getting potash, and many valuable things are burnt. So many people take it as shifting cultivators as responsible for deforestation and very inefficient use of land and plant cover. So it is extremely inefficient. So it should be banned is one argument. But another argument is that that is the way. There are two views. Shifting cultivation should be banned versus shifting cultivation is the way with some modification. You can see these views like this. For example, one British officer compared it with Sati. As evil as Sati. Okay. Whereas one forest officer, MD Chaturvedi, who went into it in detail, said this is an evolved response to the ecology. Given the character of the land, so how do we go about it? But between that it is a minus or a plus, this minus view that this is something bad that has to be stopped is more dominant. Colonial government held a view, and post-independence post-independent India held that view, and many schemes were introduced to wean away the shifting cultivators of Northeast India to more settled agriculture and variety ways of agriculture. But what is the net result? The net result is not really positive. So various things they introduced were terracing cultivation, horticulture, plantation crops, various kinds of soil conservation schemes. But only few people shifted from shifting cultivation to others. And here one important thing from anthropological perspective is shifting cultivation is also linked to society and culture. An egalitarian society, that is less inequalities and collective ownership, sense of community, but no surplus, subsistence economy. So this is a kind of society. The kind of society is practicing a kind of cultivation under certain geographical conditions. So now the outsiders or the policy makers see that shifting cultivation is a bad thing. First of all, why do they see it as a bad thing? When they view why they see it as a bad thing, it is about productivity per land. They think that the productivity can go up, and so there is wastage of resources. Okay. And then it is also reported Jhum cycle is coming down. Jhum cycle. That is, people are using the coming back to the land for within fewer number of years, without the land becoming completely ready, which means land is being used without picking up the necessary nutrients. So which means there is a net loss of nutrients in the land. That is to say, there is more degradation. Cycle getting down, and then there is more degradation, lesser yield, so lesser productivity. So, and then combined to what is happening, outsiders see it as a wastage. So because of which certain alternatives are tried. See, but we are discussing cultivation versus society and culture. What happens is that when shifting cultivation is attempted to be altered, then society also is getting affected. For example, when you introduce certain measures, those measures may not be in tune with the society, and it may happen those measures may be resource intensive, and only few people may be in a position to make use of, and so society may be split into classes or stratified, so that if society shifting cultivation change may lead to stratified society. So which means technology or economy is intrinsically linked to the society. And also, why shifting cultivation is seen as inefficient is that people think in terms of market. They think the economy should generate surplus for the market, and from the market they should buy things, and the society should change. That is to say, outsiders' view of shifting cultivation is conditioned by the fact that they want the society to produce a surplus, move above subsistence, and enter market and buy things from the market. So which means outsiders' view of shifting cultivation is linked to outsiders' view of what the society should be. Which means outsiders' perspective of shifting cultivation can be hugely ethnocentric. As opposed to relativistic. As opposed to cultural relativism. Because cultural relativism involves looking at an aspect of the culture in its totality. Here, agriculture, subsistence, and community connection, pattern of ownership, pattern of work, all those things. So outsiders see shifting cultivation as inefficient, and when they want to change, then they may end up disrupting the society. This is not a theoretical possibility. It did happen in the areas where people were attempted to be weaned away from shifting cultivation, as this shows. See, so in Mizoram, Meghalaya, and Tripura, uh, thousands were involved in certain state-supported programs, but few hundreds left Jhum, but they created a new class. So we need to ask whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. So because elements of the culture are interlinked. Okay. So that is why there are some people who believe shifting cultivation can be improved, maybe with certain technological interventions. Like there are certain plants like alder tree that contribute to reduced soil erosion. So some innovations can be introduced. So some kind of a combination of traditional knowledge was there with formal knowledge. But all these things have to be combined to improve this rather than discard. That is one view. So one critic who examined this change had this to observe. See, this is what I had to say. That he says that Jhum is the way. And some of the things they tried, for example, terracing, requires high inputs and more leaching takes place. And ICAR, ICAR proposed a particular three-tier model, upper part for something, mid portion, lower part. But that was too specific for the tribals to follow. So Ramakrishna says that these alternatives are not working and they are not viable, and they are not in harmony with the culture. So he wants the Jhum to continue. Okay. So before we close, let us discuss if people were doing shifting cultivation at one time, why did they move to intensive agriculture at all? why did they move from subsistence, diverse food to intensive agriculture? And some studies made on the shifting cultivators show how everybody may have moved away from shifting cultivation to intensive agriculture. The studies show that population growth is responsible for this. Okay. In a study of Duna, New Guinea, okay, says there was a small population growth. Small population growth led to expansion into agriculture. More land into agriculture. And more land into agriculture meant less forest, so decline in wild food and decline in hunting. And in this society, to compensate for decline in this food and hunting, they raised pigs using crops. And pigs provided nutrition, which contributed to population growth. And population growth contributed to this cycle. So what does this study show regarding why people moved from shifting cultivation to intensive agriculture? Population growth. Some little push in terms of population. So more agriculture, less of forest, more population, more agriculture, less of forest. So that's how it happened. So this cycle seemed to have been completed except in certain remote areas where intensive agriculture was difficult to be practiced. And surely when people moved from extensive to intensive, then inequalities developed and complex societies were created. Okay. Next is what is happening to shifting cultivation all over the world. Shifting cultivation had been there in Europe and also and in many other parts till end of 19th century or even the 20th century. All over the world, why shifting cultivation was disappearing? Because first industry came. Industrialization took place, which meant deforestation. Deforestation increased. So forest cover was declining, and those who were doing shifting cultivation were also exposed to presence of towns, urbanization. And urbanization gives certain facilities that leads to population growth. And more population will mean push towards intensive agriculture or cash crops. Okay. And the desire to have surplus. So when farmer shifting cultivators were facing this problem, that is all around pressure on forests, population growth, urbanization, market economy, and market economy gives certain opportunities, so they want to buy, so they want to generate surplus. So from subsistence to surplus they move. From egalitarianism to classes they move. From isolation to interlinkages they move. So in that way, they become part and parcel of mainstream society. Okay, so that is how the world over there is decline in shifting cultivation. But we can ask whether all those developments are really desirable ones. It is not that we should judge for others, mainstream should judge for others, but it is enough if mainstream doesn't think that its culture and its economy is superior to that of the shifting cultivators. So when it is not very sure that its culture is and its economy is superior, and the economy should generate surplus, and economy should be linked to the market, then maybe the mainstream will look at shifting cultivators differently, and shifting cultivators culture and society differently, and maybe mainstream people or policymakers may have a different perspective of the society, and they may think of more sympathetic, less radical, and paying respect to their culture ways of intervening. So science and technology can be used and should be used without disturbing, destroying, or forcing the shifting cultivators to become somebody like the mainstream.